All right,
Showtime.
great.
Welcome, everybody. Let me check my little participant screen. We're so excited to have you. Happy for spring break for some of you. I know in the Fresno area, our schools are on break this week, so we're excited to have you live. And for those of you that are going to join us asynchronous later, welcome. We're glad you're here too. You are at the Co-Teaching Through the Lens of UDL webinar from the Cecil project, the California Coalition for Inclusive Learning. And so we're excited to share some best practices around this topic. Our colleagues and I were sharing, like, there's so much we wish we would have known back in the day, right? Like, that's what we educators do. We always reflect back like, ooh, that first class I ever taught, or that first site I ever supported or led. And so to that end, we hope that today you're feeling affirmed, you're feeling challenged. And I'll pass the baton to our colleagues, Fred Cochran and Nupur Sati.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. You are here for Co-Teaching Through the Lens of UDL. And just as you're looking at this beginning slide, we do have a bit.ly that'll take you to a home base, and there is a QR code here for you for easy access as well. So that link will be dropped into the chat. So we welcome you to take advantage of the different resources that Nupur and I will share today. Okay. So and I think I flipped. So this Cecil leadership that we are have the gift of being able to present to you today is because of the Department of Education here in California, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, and Placer County Office of Education, who is the grantee of the California Coalition for Inclusive Learning 2.0 project. So we're really excited that we are here today with you. We also have partners in this work. As you can see on the screen, Fresno County, the Superintendent of Schools, Los Angeles County Office of Education, San Joaquin County Office of Education, where I am right now, Santa Clara County Office of Education, Sonoma County Office of Education, and then we have two geo leads. We have Valley to Coast Collaborative and the Capital Central Foothill Area Consortium. So this is exciting to be partnering with leaders in the field of universal design for learning. So I get to start by introducing Nupur Sati, who is an inclusion training specialist at Santa Clara County Office of Education. She is my new friend, and we have learned a lot about each other in planning today to present to you on co-teaching. She is a former K-8 educator. She is very experienced in technology. She was a award winner with Q, and she is great resource for Santa Clara County Office of Education and their Inclusion Collaborative Office. You're so lucky to have her today to share all of her background in co-teaching.
Thank you, Fred, for that wonderful introduction. Welcome, everybody. If you're tuning in live or on your way to pick up your kids, we decided to introduce ourselves because we wanted to really build this webinar around the co-teaching. And I hope you get a sense about how we got together to deliver this content about co-teaching through the UDL lens. And I would like to introduce my partner and co-teacher of this content, Fred, who's been an English language arts teacher and a TOSA for several years. And in his quasi-admin work with the district through MTSS, it got him to UDL, the Universal Design for Learning.
Thank you. Yes, we are co-teaching with you today. So think about co-presenters. You can also think about us as being co-teachers in this setting today. So it's going to be a really fun time. So we want to be sure that you feel at home with us today. We have options for you. We'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat, ask a question, or maybe answer a question to someone in the chat field. Share an idea or connection you see, or share hyperlinks or resources that you're aware of or that you think would be welcomed by our audience today. Also, this is another way of being sure that you're connecting with people in the chat feature, is that you could put the @ symbol and name of the person that you're if we're able to see all the participants, then you can send a direct message. So I'm sure you're aware of that, but it's always a nice reminder to know, how do I connect with somebody? Because sometimes I'll think, oh, wait a minute, I think I sent that to everybody, or everybody thinks I meant it for them. So anyway, use your best judgment for that. And we will look forward to seeing what you can share with us today. This I truly love about the webinars is the resources that we share. You have access to the home base document, the slides, all the webinar information, and then we even have a note-taking guide for you if that's something that helps you in your best learning. We will definitely share resources with you today, but if you go into the home base, you will find all the resources listed there for you, so you can peruse those at your leisure and option, and please share with others.
Right, the agenda for today, but before that, Fred, I have to see, I'm looking at the participant, it's pretty international. Like, did I just see somebody saying that from Peru and their parents here? So this is very exciting for us. Wow. So the agenda today, we're going to go over UDL as a refresher, and secondly, we're going to go over a story. Maybe it resonates with you, and perhaps that kind of situation brought you to this webinar. We're going to dive into what co-teaching is, and then we're going to talk about the marriage of co-teaching and UDL.
That's not good. Hello?
I can hear you, Fran.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think I was paused for a minute there. Okay.
We are good.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, where did you leave off?
I left off at agenda. We can continue going to the next slide.
We're ready.
And,
Good,
and that
good. I apologize
and that's the
for
beauty about doing this together, right? If a teacher misses something, you can pick up.
Yeah.
So
You're
that's
like,
perfect.
you know, so we can finish each other's sentences. So you can say,
Yeah.
well, while he's not here right now,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what Fred's going to say. And that's what a partnership's all about. Co-teaching is a definite partnership. So we hope we communicate that to everyone.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
right.
So today's goal is UDL what? And why co-teaching? What is co-teaching? And the relationship between UDL and co-teaching. I just saw a hello from Guatemala and Florida and reading from California. This is mind-blowing. Thank you all for joining.
So exciting.
We clearly can't say that we are under the pressure, but we'll do our best.
We do. Okay, so we do want to do just a little bit of background for everyone, just reminding everyone that this work is all grounded in the foundational principles of universal design for learning. So we want to remember that barrier is the design, not the learner. We want to be sure to remember that variability is the norm, it's contextual, and the great thing about it, it can be planned for. And the goal of UDL is, of course, getting students to where they can become the best learner possible, or in other words, an expert learner. So in that design process, which is part of the foundational principles of universal design for learning, is that we want to be sure we're setting clear, rigorous goals. We're anticipating variability, and that we design options to minimize any barriers in the classroom. We want to ensure that all students have access. So in speaking about that and talking about variability, we want to just kind of call it out again. So when we think about the arrangement or the design of the UDL guidelines, it's all divided up into these 9 areas, as you all know: interest, effort, and resilience, emotional well-being, perceiving content, language use, background knowledge, physical navigation skills, communication skills, and executive function skills. Just another way of looking at it, another way of just seeing the text instead of seeing in the graphic. But we do want to look at the graphic as well. So keeping in mind what will guide your instruction, help you minimize barriers to learning, how are you going to motivate students and foster expert learning. So we want to be remember that materials. Remember that how are we going to represent the content? The materials are very important, as well as how are we going to deliver the content? What are the methods that are going to be used? How will the assessment be demonstrated? Very important, as well as the environment. So how's the climate and culture supportive of the learning? Okay.
We would like to take the audience through a story. And as I narrate the story, we're curious to find out from the audience if you resonate at all. So here it goes. Imagine that you are a science middle school teacher, 7th grade science middle school teacher. A parent of a special needs son asked for mainstreaming. And mainstreaming means a kid, I see a lot of international audience. I don't know what are the words that are used in Australia or Guatemala or Peru. So kids in the special education are in their own isolated classroom, and a parent has requested that child to be in the main classroom with the general education kids, like the kids with not having disabilities. And as an open-minded teacher, Fred, I need a click over there. As an open-minded teacher, you said yes, knowing that that student is actually a student with disability and belongs to that classroom with that particular teacher who's a special education teacher. Now, the student starts coming to your classroom with an aide, with a teaching aide, with an assistant. In the beginning, it was great, and he was like a guest. But if you can give me a next click. And slowly you notice he's doing nothing really in your classroom. Though the child is not disturbing, the student is not disturbing you, but you're really not sure that he's learning anything at all, because you haven't had a chance, because you already have your students and you're not sure, the child has a special need teacher, and you haven't had time to talk to the special ed teacher except the IEP, the IEP meeting that is held.
Mm-hmm.
So as a general education teacher, you haven't had any time to talk to the special ed teacher. Things keep going on as status quo. As your frustration grew in your inabilities to help the student, the student's anxiety level grew. So much so that there was struggle between the special needed teacher, you, student, and the parent. Fred, if you can go to the next slide, please. And keep going. Until finally, the general ed teacher was helpless and mad. And the special ed teacher felt helpless and stuck in the middle because she wanted to support the kid with disability and wanted him to mainstream as well. So finally, is there a better practice to help everyone? The general education teacher, the special education teacher, parent or guardian, and both general education and special needs students. And Fred, I feel like I want to take a moment. I know we have less time, but just if anybody resonates with this struggle, I really want to see, especially all around the world, like, do you resonate that? Do you see that struggle happening? Because that's where co-teaching comes in.
Right. Definitely does. And it would be great to hear any of those experiences or to focus in on those. Nupur and I, work with schools on co-teaching, high school, middle schools, and we know the dynamics of co-teaching and the importance of the relationship that's there. And your story is important because that story happens quite often where there isn't that alliance and that partnership for to be sure that everyone's included and that we keep everyone in mind
Yeah.
as this team, right?
And I saw SY say every day for her daughter, like, and I do want to tell audience that when Fred and I were working on this thing, it was actually my experience of my son that I was going through. So that's a story for my own son. And we see that how co-teaching could really, really help everybody. Like it could really bring down the anxiety level for all those people that you're seeing on the screen and how it's going to benefit. So we're gonna talk about what co-teaching is and how we can relieve that stress and anxiety for everybody through that practice. So it's a proactive planning. You just heard the story about reactive. The teacher is ready to kick the student out. I cannot support. I don't know how to support. So co-teaching in UDL is proactive approach to save ourselves from that anxiety.
That makes me think about tier 1 instruction. That tier 1 instruction should be a proactive approach. We're trying to provide access to everyone without being reactive to the needs of students. So if you remember in your UDL trainings in the very beginning is to be sure that we look at UDL as the main platform for tier 1 so that all students do have access and can and if we don't, then we're marginalizing our audience or our students so that we're not giving them what they need. What do you think? Do you think there's a misconception about this, Nupur?
Yeah, and then we think that if we are helping one minority group, we are not helping all, which is really not true. When you design from that lens, you're actually designing for everybody in your classroom.
Right. Well, that is, I think, something we try to be sure everyone realizes from the get-go, with that, whether it's in co-teaching or gen ed or gen ed setting, that UDL is not an opportunity, or this is not an opportunity to differentiate instruction. It's to be proactive and provide choice so the students can make the right decision or learn how to make the right decision, what fits them the best in order to get to that learning goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So shall we give away the secret and tell what co-teaching is about, Fred?
I think so. I think it's
Okay,
important.
let's go.
All right. So here we have the definition of co-teaching by Murawski, 2003. When two or more educators co-plan, co-instruct, and co-assess a group of students with diverse needs in the same general education classroom. Wow, I'm making a picture in my head of what this looks like. What do you think?
To me, it is like taking an equal load, thinking it's not your student, that student is our student, right? You're looking from every lens, from co-planning, co-instructing, and co-assessing. So really thinking that we are responsible. Like you and I are responsible for this about 60 people here on live, or, so we're together as we are responsible.
Right.
So
Right.
not just one of us.
Right. And I think the term general education is important because all students are gen ed students.
Yeah.
So, mhm.
Sorry, Fred. I have to say, I hope and wish for a time when there's the word general education and special education just goes out in thin air, like it doesn't exist, like truly, like you should just
Right. No,
like,
I know what you mean, but you know, in the MTSS work we do, we try to remove the labels, right? We want students to be identified as students. They're all our responsibility, right?
exactly. Otherwise, then if there's bucket already, then it's easy for us to put them like, this is the bucket. This is where the kid
Right.
goes. Okay.
Right. Okay. So you may, we're going to go through and actually identify and name some of the co-teaching models for you today. We're going to just talk briefly about parallel teaching, alternative teaching, one teach, one assist, station teaching, team teaching, and one teach, one observe. Right now you're seeing a visual and it's just kind of a map of what these look like, but I'm going to take you through them individually and just kind of tell you what is actually happening in each of these models. So if we look at, whoops, well, I am going to take you through that. Maybe I'm going to take that through you in just a minute. But we're going to address some questions first. I'm sorry. So, Nupur, let's talk about what needs to be established when we are, working with our co-teacher. How are we designing to be sure that we have set clear, rigorous goals, our lesson objectives are clear? That's really so important to begin with, right? And then are we thinking about any potential barriers for students to access curriculum, objectives, or goals? And what are the learner needs, right? Remember in the very beginning of this webinar, I talked about, you can anticipate variability, right? But also we want to understand what the learning needs of our students are. And you and I know that we each have strengths that we can draw from in just this example of co-presenting together or in this setting today. And where do we rely on each other? We identify the strengths that we have, and I can let go and let you take over because we know it's safe to do that because we have that relationship, right?
And even though we have met for a short time, we can still develop that relationship if their goal is to deliver the content, right? It's you don't have to spend a long time to build that.
Right. And you really need to understand what your supplies, your technology tools that you have available, because remember in the guidelines, you want to be able to help students navigate and be able to demonstrate their understanding of what they are learning. So what technology do you use? What assistive technology do you use or you're aware of, and how, what may benefit, a few may benefit more than, broadening the scope of users is another way of saying it. So I think a special note here to remember that more than one co-teaching model can be used in a lesson. I think that's the versatility of all of this, is that there can be you can naturally shift. It's like driving from one speed limit to the other. You can do that, right? And maybe we should talk about some UDL considerations. So what are ways to enhance student choice, adjust demands and resources, increase challenge, encourage collaboration, or provide opportunities for student reflection? Before, what would you say to this?
So coming back to the story, how we kind of started about that student who is with special needs going into the mainstream classroom, like how do we think about, some options and giving them choice to the student in when he's going to a general education classroom, so that the demand is not too much, but just about right. So the frustration level of the student doesn't rises, but at the same time, he feels empowered to be in that classroom getting the same content.
Yeah. Yeah, I think knowing your students will help a lot in this way to be sure to do this. You want to think of persistence in the UDL and challenge in the guidelines in order to encourage that and foster community and collaboration. We want to be sure the students understand what reflection is and how to support them in mastering their own learning. So what means can be used to diversify the ways you present information, enhance vocabulary comprehension, and activate prior knowledge?
So when you think about, for example, a student who is having a challenge reading, and you're a science teacher and say teaching about different forms of rocks. And if a student cannot access a big science textbook that we all know, I don't know if it's true in other countries, but we have a big textbook. And growing up in India, I also used to have a big fat textbook. And if the student cannot access, how can we provide different ways to present that information? Because if the goal is to understand how different rocks are formed, it can be given through an audio, through a video, through a visual, right? And if you think about designing from that special needs student in mind, I bet you it'll help the other kids, right? Because we never have a class of, if the story we told about was a 7th grade classroom, but I bet there are other students in the same classroom who are reading probably at 4th grade level, 5th grade level, right? They all could get benefit from having an audio book or a video options for them.
Right. Right, they definitely could, and but unless we're willing to try, we're not going to know, right? So you need to be able to know what your materials you have in order to provide different ways for students to have access, right? So thinking about that, how about choices? How are the choices for learners to respond and use various tools for listening, speaking, and writing offered?
And that goes back to when a student chooses, and the ultimate goal of UDL, it makes them an expert learner, right? And everybody can be an expert learner, if whether you have any form of disabilities, whether you do not speak English or you speak another language, right? Everybody has that feels an empowerment when you make the choice as a learner to do how you work the best. So
You know what I like about these questions is it just takes me right to, and you probably maybe have figured this out already, that we're talking about each principle of universal design for learning, right? We're talking about engagement, representation, action, and expression, but we're doing that in a conversation, right? We're asking a question. Instead of saying, well, to do this, you need to offer ways to customize the display of information. Yes, but now we're saying it and we're personalizing it, right? So we're saying it for to create the reason why we're doing this. So the guidelines are an important graphic to reference, but really we need to know them well enough to have the conversations about it. And
yeah, just like how Fred has that, right? Because he has a graphic right behind him.
Right, I do.
Wall.
No, I live in my UDL world
yeah,
here.
he is in the UDL world. He doesn't have one, he has two. If you notice in the back, those green, purple, and blue posters.
Right. I have it, and I also have my mine right here so that I can have quick reference to when I speak.
I can lean on you for that then, Fred.
You can definitely lean to me. It took me a long time to be able to just talk to the guidelines and find where they fit. And that's what I love about the work, is to be able to say, but that's where this fits. And that's why it fits into this great framework that helps our students you know, to be able to access and really we're talking now about agency. We're talking about student agency, and to be sure that students are being, you know, we're filling those buckets for them, right? Right.
You know, okay, we got to move on. Fred, really quickly, I think we can just continue this conversation, and I don't know, 4:30 will be over, but it reminds me, I was doing a UDL training somewhere, and I often get a question asked that, I mean, does this really move into college or the workspace? Like, what is this expert learner? Like, why do we want to have student agency? And, you know, to that, I always say to the audience, that won't you like a workforce and an organization or a society where people are empowered to do things and driven themselves rather you driving it, right? Won't you like in place, like even though if it's not happening in colleges and testing or whatever the ultimate thing is, but won't it be nice to create a society of kids who become into adults who are driving, who have driven and motivated themselves? But moving on to parallel teaching.
No, I think that is so important. And you know, we're going to just talk briefly about what parallel teaching is. So think about it this way: a general education educator and a special educator each delivers instruction on the same content to a heterogeneous group consisting of approximately half the class. Now, the image we're looking at here is important because the blue figures represents the co-teachers, and it doesn't say one is the special ed teacher, one's the gen ed teacher. It represents two teachers in the classroom, half the class facing forward, looking at that attention to that one teacher, the others looking the opposite way at the other teacher. So you have this setting where you know, you're dividing the class up, and maybe it's not exactly in half. It doesn't have to be in half, but that's kind of the image that we want to explain here, is that what this might look like. Then we want to look at alternative teaching. Now, in this setting or model, one teacher works with a small group while the other teacher interacts with the larger group. So in this setting, you may have students facing forward with that one adult, that one teacher in the front, and then maybe a small group gathered together with the second teacher working in a small group setting. So alternative teaching. So think of it like that. There's the one teacher is maybe having a larger group where the other teacher is working with a smaller group.
And we can always rotate, Fred, right? So we, you know, as like the teacher who's working with a smaller group goes back to the larger group and rotate, because quite often then we see if somebody's working with a larger group, then they have the command or they are the leader. But we are really thinking about from the co-pilot,
Right.
like both of them are equal part of.
Right. And you know, and that means a lot for the students in the classroom as well, to see both teachers taking on the roles, so they're not always the one working with a small group, that they're all our students, right? So so changing those roles are so important because it has it leaves an impression on the students as well as to the, you know, what's happening here. Right.
This reminds me of when I had an RSP. Co-pilot. Thank you, Luana. When I used to have RSP teacher in my classroom, I was a general ed teacher, and that RSP teacher used to come for a particular group of students, and the other students would ask her questions, and then my students would ask me again, like, can I do that, like Miss Smith? I said, she said so. So yes, you don't have to ask me. Like, you know, she said it, so you're going with it, right? So even as a general ed teacher, you have to really be the one to deliver that message that, you know, the other adult is equal in this play.
Right. I think the students see that it's fun. They say, "Oh, that looks like it'd be kind of nice." And isn't it nice to be in a small group? I love to be in a small group. I feel less intimidated. I feel more willing to share. But you know, that just leads into creating that environment where everyone feels that they can enjoy learning. So you know, it offers that opportunity too, huh? Well, how about one teach and one assist? So in this setting, one teacher leads, the other teacher offers assistance to individual students or small groups. Here you would have possibly, could look like this, a teacher in front of the class. Hopefully not all the rows are, they're not all rows facing forward, but sometimes that's the way a classroom setting is designed, and maybe one teacher is assisting individual students in the classroom. How do you feel about that, Nupur?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to this story because this co-teaching, how the implementation part of it. So given the scenario that we explained, I think this would be a great opportunity for the special ed teacher to go into the classroom. Perhaps they could get a substitute for the special ed teacher, and for her to go to a general ed classroom and support everybody just to get a taste of it, right? If you haven't, as a school, implemented or taken co-teaching, taking these baby steps are the key, right? Just getting a substitute teacher and planting that special need teacher into that classroom just to get a feel of the water, as they say in American idiom. Is that right, Fred?
Yeah.
Feel the water, taste of, what is it? Whatever
Yeah,
it is.
there's something like that. I think so. I think so too. Yeah.
I'm always learning.
Right. I think a lot of time, I think what I've noticed in my experience with coaching, the co-teaching model, is the fact that this might be the kind of the go-to in the beginning, because you're not quite sure yet how to
Get a feedback.
yeah, to work in sync with each other, right?
Yeah, just to get started, and then slowly switch it. Like let the general special ed teacher lead it, right? You know, because everybody's getting their feet wet, right? The general education teacher is also seeing the special ed teacher in the classroom, like, oh my God, there's another other certified educator in my classroom. Oh, what a threat. That's how we see it. I mean, I'm speaking from being a general education teacher. So and then gradually swap. Right. I mean, that's how you got to start small. We're not asking everybody. I mean, ask anybody to climb a Mount Everest and show the peak. Like nobody wants to climb it. Which we're going to come to what the peak is, right, Fred? Of
Right.
co-teaching.
Right, exactly. I think also being in the very beginning, letting students know that you are both there for all students, so that they know
That's the
that
key.
that you know, as I mentioned earlier, that you know you could have different models of co-teaching within a lesson taking place. It's important for students to know that both teachers are both there for all students, so that they have this alliance, they have the chemistry to be the ones that can finish each other's sentences if they need to. But that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of that takes that relationship, you know, working on your relationship with each other, and be sure to give each other that latitude to do that. What about station teaching? Teachers like divide the instructional content into several segments and present the content in separate stations around the classroom. I was on in a training last week with one of the high schools that we're supporting, and they were doing the training on what is station teaching for the co-teachers. And it was really eye-opening for, and the conversation was very rich in the roles that we take in, and being able to take on a each teacher taking on a group, and then having another group that's independent, but really being able to change those roles or flip positions, so that you're not always seen as being that teacher only with one group of students.
And we want to clarify the other station as being
Independent.
It's independent.
Yeah,
right?
they're
The one that
independent.
purple.
Yeah, they're independently working, but it doesn't mean that you don't pop over and check in on them, right? There's no rule that says you can't do that. You know, you want to have them know that, you know, maybe take a moment, leave a question with the small group you're working with, and just being sure you you use your ability to check in with others, right?
You rotate through them. Yeah,
rotate. Sure. I like this one especially, team teaching, where both teachers share in the planning and instruction of all students. in a highly coordinated fashion. Wow, we
Mhm.
see two
That's the
teachers in the front of the classroom with all students, so that they have the presence of both teachers there. Now, do they necessarily have to both be in front of the classroom, Nupur? Or could
N-
they be in different positions of the classroom and still team?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like this model, Fred, when I was doing some work with a school district and it's first time I walked into the classroom, I truly could not tell which, and the team teaching was going on. One teacher was in the front, the other teacher was kind of walking around, but still on the side, like kind of like a dance, like one teacher's in the front and then the other teacher comes in and clarifies something and the other teacher goes back into the class and between the students. So beautiful. Like I literally I had to ask them, like, so are you the special ed teacher or the general ed teacher? And she's like, I'm so glad that you asked this question. Is that's the peak that we're talking. This is like the ultimate, the team teaching
Oh,
where we hope, right, Brad?
right. So definitely, we've done a number of walkthroughs in the schools we're supporting, and that's exactly what we're hoping for, that we cannot tell the difference, right? Or who's taking on which, who represents special ed or gen ed, to be able to see that. And the other big eye opener is when you can't tell the difference between the students in the classroom,
Ah, that would
right?
be
That
that's
is that is like the
that's
the
my like,
cherry the cherry on
yeah,
top, right?
if that
Is
happens.
and but that just doesn't happen automatically. There has to
Mm,
be that um, intentional planning or
mhm.
knowing your strengths with each other and being able to um, pass on responsibilities with each other. So it's just like that partnership. It's so important. We talk about relationship. It's really a partnership as well, right?
Yeah. And when we create as an adult this kind of system and the structure, the kids would themselves not be differentiate themselves from the special needs students, right? Or a student who's speaking
Right.
another language, right? So because they would see more beyond their disability or beyond their language challenges, right? They'll go beyond. Uh, and the onus would lie on us to create that as an adults.
Right, right. It's great to see it just progress and I love watching this, observing it.
Looks
Okay.
like one of the parents have experienced that. As a parent, they found station teaching very helpful as it builds independence, right? That's where we're talking about expert learning too.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
beautiful peer interaction too. We forgot about that. Thanks for adding. Yeah,
Yeah, it
right,
really
because it's giving an opportunity.
right. Right. One teacher, one observe. That's another model where one teacher takes the instructional lead while the other teacher is observing students. So that could be helpful, especially when you are doing giving feedback to each other, right? As to
Mhm.
what's happening or what's happening with students in the classroom. What do you think? So,
Yeah, yeah, taking notes, like, yeah,
mhm.
for that purpose.
Yeah, I think it's important. I don't think it's the model that should be done all the time, but it's necessary for us to have those conversations about students, um, because it is about their learning and how are we progress monitoring that, right?
And I would also say that the rotation should happen, that not only one teacher is doing the observation, right? We are rotating, that both teachers
Right.
are getting time. It's kind of like your data collection moment, right? You're teaching, say you're doing a lesson, and then this month I'm going to sit and observe the students, how they're taking the information.
Mhm.
Um, I
Yeah.
do see a question on the chat.
Oh, good.
Okay, we're gonna come back to that. They're talking about it takes time and building relationships and what's
Mhm.
the easy way to, you know, the question we often get
Right, it
about
does.
planning.
Yeah, often there's that question about co-planning time. Uh, we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure.
And
Okay.
Fred and Napor, I'll jump in here real quickly. This is Elisa Torres Martin speaking. The piece and the tension point I hear us talk about in the chat and obviously in the field, remember that navigating models and also navigating the options we design, their response to barriers that are grounded in a goal, right? So when I hear Fred and Napor say today, I don't hear you with a recipe specifically saying, do this for 3 months, do this for 2 months, do this for so on and so forth. It's almost creating a certain level of expertise leveraged by both partners in service of that goal, right? So as a former high school math teacher, I would have been really, it would have been really helpful to have more than just my math brain in the room teaching high school. It would have been helpful to have other multiple means of representation besides what I knew. And so towards that goal within that unit, in the context of co-teaching, a specific model might have fit for my particular learners, right? Because variability is the norm. So when thinking about all the what ifs, colleagues, remember to get grounded in the goal of the unit, the goal of the lesson, the goal of the semester, the student's goals, right? Goals is what I call the burger to the sandwich, right? It's the thing that grounds us, and then it helps us navigate, because otherwise we do what I call moralizing instruction. We say this is good versus bad, versus looking at our instructional design and saying, is this in alignment towards the goal? Is this going to minimize the goal?
Right. I think also it gives students the opportunity to see how we process, and, how where divergent thinkers can be, it's honoring all ways of thinking and getting to addressing the learning goal. So yes, I think that is an important consideration. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions popping up at the moment?
No, I think we tackled it.
We tackled it. Good. Okay. So this is, now we're going to talk about co-teaching, what it is and what it is not. And I'm going to let Nupur, you're going to take this piece, right?
I sure will. Okay, so co-teaching is 2 or more faculty working together. What co-teaching is not, I'm going to go alternate actually. A teacher and an assistant. Okay. What co-teaching is, conducted in the same classroom at the same time, going back to the story, in the same mainstream classroom, versus when a few students are pulled out to work with SPED teacher, the special education teacher. Co-teaching is when both teachers plan together. And we're going to talk a little bit about when we find out a time when you're just getting started. And co-teaching is not the teaching the student with disability in the back of the classroom or in the back of the building in the school too. No, that's not. Co-teaching is when both teachers provide substantive instruction together. So we kind of talk about, Fred, when we were talking about that, both of them taking turns, right? Right, not just one person talking. And even though Fred would like to talk and continues talking, doing this webinar, but you see that we are going back and forth. So we are taking enough time. Fred, just having fun here.
I know you are.
This, we have built a relationship in the last few weeks, Elisa. Like, this is like, we say it doesn't take much time to build relationship,
That's
Even
true.
people say, you just have to have few meetings. You can do it over Zoom. And what co-teaching is not, when the SPED teacher walks around the room taking notes all period while the general education teacher instructs. Yeah, we have seen that as well. What co-teaching is, when both teachers assess and evaluate student progress, right? So when you talk about that model where you're observing, so we are taking turns observing. What co-teaching is not, when the general education teacher assesses her students and the special education teacher assesses his students. And what co-teaching is not, when one teacher takes charge so the other can leave the room. I'm sorry, teachers, it's hard to get bathroom break, but no, that's
Yeah. Yeah, there shouldn't be a time to go make copies, right? I probably have to do that, or I'm going to refill my coffee or something like that. Right. So those
anything I miss? Anything, friend?
those do resonate, with me. Thanks for sharing those. I think what I hear a lot is the one where it says when both teachers plan together. So
Mm.
what are some of the barriers there that you've experienced?
Are we throwing that question in the chat? Is that the question for the audience or?
Yeah, it could be us or it could be in the audience. We know that planning time, prep time is really would be a wonderful time to be able to share and lesson plan together. But what if that's not an easy solution to planning together? What are some alternatives that you might think of? So kind of thinking too, we talked about,
That's a good one.
yeah,
Yeah.
identifying our strengths and knowing our talents and what we're good at doing is kind of dividing up responsibilities could be one way to do that. Maybe there's an art um, part of the lesson that you're going to teach a concept, or maybe it's something around technology that one is better versed than the other to do. Do we take on roles? Does that help instead of thinking that, well, we just don't have time to plan together?
I kind of like how Fred, like when we started working on planning for this webinar, like you asked, like, what are you are comfortable with? And, what are you good at? What's your strength? And we kind of played around, like, what the
Mhm.
structure would be. And
Sure.
we gauged each other. And it was a, one Zoom call and the next. So,
Yeah, and I think we learned from that by that deliberate connection with each other that we are going to do this, right? And then we want to make it we want to know that we planned together, right? That we actually did have a number of time, well, probably a couple of 2-3 hours together in just really how would we message this UDL co-teaching through the lens of UDL, and what barriers might we anticipate in this discussion? And we really came down to the fact that we really and in this planning is around, let's tell a story. Let's invite people into a story so that we can um, create that imagery and maybe some emotion to why this is important and how it can be supported.
and one of the attendees was talking about how when you're teaching multiple co-teaching classes and you don't have time in build to plan with all of them.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so you're seeing in the chat, Google Doc, Google Drive, just streamlining the process. Shared doc, shared slide, like we had the shared slides, right? We had like a pre-brief meeting before we started working on the slides.
Right. Yes. And, even if you are limited on the time or the capacity to do that, why can't you have questions that you ask between each other? So what do you think about this? How would you address this? And just engaging in just conversation as you want students to do, right? But why not engage your co-teacher in some think alouds, or how would you process this? So that would still give the appearance that you're together in the lesson itself, right? So
Absolutely. And
that
those
would be
questions can be answered during even staff meeting, like the example where the one of the participants are talking about not having time to plan. Perhaps in that staff meeting could be used as a time, right?
right.
To do that,
Yeah.
even if the other classes are not doing it, but maybe think aloud for everybody, or
Right.
maybe it'll bring in more partnership.
Right. Well, and that's the reason why we wanted to be sure that in the I believe in the note catcher in the home base that our email addresses are there, and um, we'd love to hear from you, and we would love to share some of our experiences and maybe give you some ideas to think about as well, right? So um, we want to do a little activity because we're getting close on time, but we want to talk about some expressions, some co-teaching expressions. I love analogies. I love to think about different ways of making connections. And so in thinking about co-teaching, I think of it as like a well choreographed dance. Look at the different dance moves here. The images that are on the screen are about either a waltz or a tango or a dancing independently or waltzing. I already said that. Expressive dancing, but it all kind of comes down to a well choreographed dance, I think. And I think that's one way you could think about creating some imagery to really make it a little more, I say, oh, I can connect to that. Or maybe thinking about how talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. That's a quote by Michael Jordan. And that can elevate classrooms to world championship levels. And lastly, co-teaching is leveraging the expertise of two educators in order to assist students in reaching the pinnacle of their potential. Where in this image, we see two students that have climbed the rock. Maybe it's not Mount Everest, Nupur, but they have gotten there together, and they got the high five together, and they're there. If you could think of one that you'd like to share in the chat with us, we'd love to call that out. Or just think about it as we wind down with the last 5 minutes today. Do any of these resonate with you, Nupur?
Oh, I love having a good question. So there's a great question in the chat, Fred.
Oh, good.
Why some districts are better than others in implementing the UDL framework. Our district says that it's difficult to change the teacher mindset. To change anybody's mindset, you really have to meet where they're at. Like, even when we're working with adults, there is an adult learning theory, but I feel that just like students, like you really have to meet where they're at and show them the progress they are making. I know it sounds challenging, but if we say it is a challenge, then we won't attempt. It's like saying, I'm going to try to meet you, Fred. Like if I say I try, you will never do it. Right? So if I say it's a challenging mindset, yes, it is challenging, but it is not impossible. Right. But as long as we are able to understand their barrier, the mindset, what's the barrier on their mindset? There's a barrier in there, right? So we have to understand. So anytime I go in training and somebody is with 30 years of teaching and they're like not ready to listen to UDL, I'm all down, humble, and I'm trying to understand, like, really, you are already doing some part. What is that you are doing? And what's coming in to see that all children can learn? Right. Because they haven't had that experience, right? You really have to give them a benefit of doubt, right? How many kids have experience? So don't give up is what I'm trying to say.
That's right. Did anyone have an expression to share? We're
gonna end with the moral of the story if there's no expression.
Look what happens. Oh, here we go. So think about co-teaching models. Think about what model you might use if you are planning at the beginning of the year or the first 4 weeks of school. What models would be good to start with? Think about the barriers to using the model, and how will you partner and mitigate for those barriers, and what design principles of using UDL will apply with the model. I'm going to take us to just a couple of quotes from the schools that I work with in Tracy. The UDL framework supports asset-based learning through an inclusive structure in which co-teachers have the flexibility and support to embed differentiation and specially designed instruction shared between both teachers, addressing the needs of all students in the learning environment. That comes from Julie Wimberly, who is a TOSA I have the privilege of working with at Tracy Unified School District. Because of the amount of time we have, the other quote is from the director of special ed there at Tracy Unified as well.
So we're going to leave you.
see what this is yours.
Yeah, moral of the story. So we started with a story and we want to leave you, and every good story has a moral. So the moral of the story that we shared today is that we have to make your ego smaller, the teacher's ego smaller, to amplify the self-esteem of your students. Right? We have to really think that we are really small and ego smaller to
Love
really
it.
boost the self-esteem of our students, all students.
So be sure to take a look at the different resources that we shared with you in the home base. Lots of great things. And don't forget, you know, there's some great books out there. Elizabeth Stein has the second edition of Elevating Co-Teaching that is available. And it is a great resource. And the next webinar is April 29th on early childhood. The registration link is there. Please be sure to register for that. And here's a quote to leave us with. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. That's by Albert Einstein. So I hope we can leave you with the fact that you may be questioning this, but hopefully the curiosity will drive this to become the reason for existing. So on behalf of both of us today, I want to say thank you for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
Fred. Thank you, Nupur. The next slide has the survey, and then the next slide after that, participants, there is a UDL Con International little commercial for you. The recording will be up on the Cecil website. If one of my colleagues can drop the Cecil, let me see if I can multitask. I don't know if that link's going to work. Daniela or somebody can drop in the Cecil website. The recording for all previous webinars will be there. And we'll see you April 29th with our colleagues from, I think it's Ashley Placer. Daniel will be presenting on early childhood through the lens of UDL.
Don't miss it. It'll be great.
For sure. Let me drop the website so it shows up on the. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, Brenda dropped the cecil.cas.org/webinars has all the previous webinars. And there's lots of other goodies there.
Great.
All right, everybody, enjoy your spring break if that's where you're at. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Nupur. Appreciate your guidance through this conversation.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care. All right, bye-bye.